Technology is all over the place. It's just a part of our life, but it doesn't help us if it's a burden to us, okay? So we want to identify things that are going to help you, and you have to do your part to identify things that will be helpful for you, not just stuff to have, not an additional process. Nobody in this classroom is trying to add something additional to your plate. We don't want you to have one more plate to spin. All right, so if you will, grab your phone. We're going to do a little Menti poll here. Log into menti.com. Pop in that code at the top and give us an idea of which technology is the biggest help to accomplishing your task as a field leader. So right now, where you're at, I'm sorry? Absolutely. The number is 8985-4757. So I just want to know what's working for you. What technology are you using right now that is the biggest help to accomplishing your task as a field leader? This kind of gives us a jumping off point. We know what you're using, how deep you are in it, what you're accustomed to, and what you may not have seen yet. Bluebeam, I love to see that. Cell phone, absolutely. My father-in-law was in the construction world for his whole life. And when he finished his career, he was still having to come home at the end of the day and get on the landline phone and then make all his calls for the whole day. It's crazy to think about that, isn't it? And we have just surrounded by technology today. Cell phone is just an essential part of what we do. It's hard to even imagine being connected to a landline like that. Bluebeam, iPad, Google Drive, PlanGrid. That's the second time I've seen PlanGrid today. I like that. Foreman Toolbox, laptop, excellent, excellent. So good. We got some folks in here that are utilizing some technology. So our learning objectives for today, first of all, we want to make tech hardware work for you. That's probably the simplest one. But we want to make tech hardware work for you. We want to make apps and programs work for you. We want to make VDC work for you. And we want to make battery tools work for you. That's what we hope you come away with, how to do that better, how to operate in those areas better. We spent a lot of time and effort trying to manage timers. Now, maybe you're like, timers, but by now, hopefully you've heard that today because you should have been through a class where that was talked about. Timers. We used to say TIM, tools, information, and material. That's what we thought about managing. But really, it's more than that. It's tools, information, material, expectations, recognition, safety. The list probably could be a lot longer. We just ran out of cool acronyms to use. Sometimes you're managing psychology. Sometimes you're raising some kids on a job site. You got a lot of hats you got to wear. And I get that, But if technology can help you do better at spinning all those plates and keeping all those things in air, managing all those pieces, then that's what we're after here today. How can I use technology to help me out? Making tech hardware work for you. Smart gang boxes, iPhones, iPads, laptops, and printers. They may sound like simple devices, may sound like no-brainers to some people, but for some of us, maybe it's the first time we're hearing about it. And what I want you to see is that these technologies are out there, they're supplied by Miller, they're available. We're going to jump into an occurrence that was part of my life. And around 2014, my boss gave me an iPad. And I literally looked at him and said, "What is this for?" And he said, "I don't know, but the executive said we need to get more tech hardware into people with capable hands." And I'm like, all right then, So I kind of sat there for a bit. I started to dig into it a little bit on my personal time and eventually started to use it at work. And I realized, hey, there's really some cool things you can do having a little bit of additional tech hardware. There are some advantages to it. So, there's a pattern there that you can duplicate. I don't do anything to violate Miller's IT policy. I never would advocate that. But do take your tech hardware home and use it for stuff that's going to help you learn. Use it in the personal world as well. Don't cross any lines, but if you learn how to play with that thing and figure out what it can and can't do and how it can make you more efficient in your personal life, you're going to eventually translate that over to work. If you just think about it as a work tool, it's just like something else. It's just going to sit in the toolbox, and it's just not going to get the use it needs to get. The bottom line is the right hardware in the right hands means more efficiency for your projects. And so you may be carrying a lot on your shoulders right now. Imagine you are. But if you can identify key people, those performers on your project that are already doing as much work as they can, they're just missing this piece, get that hardware into their hands. Get that phone, get that iPad, get that laptop. Sometimes we get that real conservative thought process, like I can't spend that money. I can't get somebody, I can't do that. They're gonna bat me down, they're gonna swat it down when I ask for it. But go ahead, and if you can identify that person, if you can make the argument why they need this piece of technology, then do it. If you can make the argument, you can give that to your supervisor, you can give that to your PM, you can make that argument, if needed, to the executive that's going to sign off on it. Say, look, this is legitimate, this is going to make our job flow better. Don't be scared to get that technology in the hands because you don't know where they're going to go with it. I've done that. I've repeated that process over and over, and I've seen guys that knew nothing about technology on day one just bloom into users that are just like power users. So does everybody know what a smart game box is? Anybody got one on their job? Just show of hands if you got a smart game box. So smart game box is an excellent replacement for a print table. It is a virtual interface. It has a big screen in it, has a computer in it, lets you look at prints on whatever platform in the virtual world that you're going to be using. That varies from project to project. Sometimes it's one that you may have to host. You may have to actually create yourself because you may not be working for a GC that's going to do that. But there's some great benefits to having this information at the fingertips of your employees. It will stop them from coming to you with as many questions. They'll be able to go answer their own questions from the print. That saves you time. It helps you focus on things you need to do. It also, especially with the younger generation, you're probably not going to have to train them how to use it. They're going to walk up to that thing. They're going to push the older guy aside and say, let me show you how to do this. So, I mean, it really is a technology just waiting to be tapped into, waiting to be used out there. If you're not using it, if your job can warrant it, if your job needs it, look into it and see what your PM, what your team thinks about getting one on the site. Using Google Sheets and Docs. So really this is a discussion, this piece here is about live documents and forms. Now, some of you may have been around when we weren't with Google. You know we're with Google now, and maybe that was a difficult process, but there's some real advantages to using the live real-time forms and documents that Google hosts. Tracking logs, timesheets, live documents, and forms. That's the world I want to focus on here for just a minute. So right there it says Ken's Crew. That is a form that is essentially something you've probably seen, not that one, but you've seen one as a survey. They get sent out sometimes from IT and other groups. They'll say, please complete this survey. So that's something I've created for my project. Everybody that comes to my projects gets a text from me with a link to that form. Okay, so all I need is their phone number. I send them that link, and they are asked to answer their questions. Give me your legal name, give me your valid email address, give me your phone number, emergency contact, and so on. In the healthcare world, we have to run background checks on our people, so it's incredibly important that I have legal name, I have correct contact information. And so they can put all that in, and it keeps me from having to have my 10 new hires come into the trailer or 10 new people to the job sit down while I try to type their information in and not misspell anything and get all that right. They've already given it to me. It's also got, at the very last, at the bottom there's a link to the group messaging that we use for my project. We'll talk about that in a minute. The last question on my form says, do you understand how to use this link to join my project's group messaging? And they check no, and then of course I reach out to them or they reach out to me. They check yes, I know they're on board, and I look for them to show up in my group. So just a really, really cool, simple thing. What it used to look like is that when somebody was sending people over, you'd call up the other superintendent and be like, hey, can you send me all the information for the 5 people you're sending? Make sure, don't tell me their nickname. They send over Bobby Joe and turn out his name ain't even Bobby Joe, it's Edward. And you're like, I can't do anything with that. So if a person doesn't know how to spell their own name, that's a problem, right? So with this form, you're getting the legal name, you're getting the right information, it's not filtered through anybody else, and it's not involving somebody who shouldn't be involved. So less hands, less touches, less time, saving you time that whole process of onboarding people. Simple, easy, really effective. This over here is a tracking log. There's at least one person in this room that's been part of developing this with me. And this is just a tracking log that I use. I'm not here to tell you got to use this tracking log. There are some in the Foreman Virtual tool that help you to track change orders and RFIs and everything separately, constraints. This is one, my brain's more of a one-stop shopping kind of a brain, and I like to have everything in one place. So if I have questions, they go on that log. That's what you see up top. If they become an RFI, we attach an RFI number to it. It handles the tasks that we're going to be doing today, over the next 3 days, over the next few weeks, over the next few months. It's all there, and it's prioritized top to bottom. If it's up high, it's more important. If it's down low, it doesn't matter as much. So it's kind of a chronologically how we're going to put it in. It's a great idea to have a written plan. If you don't have a written plan, more than likely what you have is a theory in your mind. And when your boss wants to talk about or look at your plan, it's really hard to show them the theory in your mind. But you can show them this. And they'll say, Shazam, this guy's got his act together. He knows what he's doing this week and the next month and so on. That's always where you want to be. And technology help you get there. One of the unintended consequences about this, pretty cool actually, when I designed this, it was because I just needed to get my junk together. I needed to keep everything in a straight line and be able to manage it. One of the unintended consequences was that I wound up sleeping better at night. Has anybody here ever woke up in the middle of the night, cold sweat? hear your heartbeat in your ears, think I'm going to roll over and go back to sleep, but it doesn't work. I don't know if that's a panic attack or if that's a near-death experience. I don't know what that is. But I mean, who wants that, right? Since I've been writing down my plans, since I've been having that plan on paper, I wake up in the middle of the night and I say, oh, that's right, it's written down, and I go back to sleep. And I didn't do that on purpose, but man, what a blessing from just using these forms. And the cool thing about this is all my lead people can input on this form. It's not just me. They see something, they log it. They see something we missed, they say, hey, we need to reprioritize this. So it's not just on me anymore. I'm sharing that responsibility. I'm sharing that information. They're sharing it with me. It becomes much more of a team effort. I'm not the only guy who's got all this on his shoulders anymore. Offloading information from your mind is one of the benefits. Sharing responsibilities, delegating and doing it in real time without having to make a phone call. My team just knows how the log works. If it's got their name next to it, it's their task. It's real simple. And preserving valuable mental resources. And I don't know if you guys have thought about yourself as a limited resource, but you are. You're one person, you only have 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much that you can do. And when you try to go beyond that, something's going to give, and usually not in a good way. It's usually going to be bad. And doing these simple things, using technology, if it can make me sleep better at night, if it can make you sleep better at night, that's worthwhile. And if I can make me live longer because I'm less stressed, because I don't have as much of a burden on me, then, man, we've hit a target. That's what this is all about. How can you make your job work better? How can you be more efficient? How can you have less stress? So let's see what we can do to unload stress. That's really what we're talking about here. All right, Google Keep. Google Keep is probably one of my favorite things to talk about out of everything we're going to talk about today. It is an unlimited virtual notepad. Now, all of us here know what a notepad is. We probably, used to carry one in our pocket for how many years. And anytime we need to remember something, we write it down, and it is our brain in so many ways. We write down things, we make drawings, all kind of stuff. One of the limitations of a notepad, one of the drawbacks, is that paper is vulnerable. If it gets rained on, if it gets lost, it's gone. And all that information you had in there is gone with it. This is a virtual notepad. If you make it a point to go paperless and put your notes into Google Keep, this app, it lives in the cloud. You lose your phone, guess what? It's still in the cloud. You can retrieve that by logging in from any device anywhere on the planet. And so this thing will work on Android, iPhone. It works from your PC, your desktop. It's just wonderful, and it allows you to really have that information at your fingertips all the time. I use it in personal things and in work. If this is just what the dashboard looks like on a computer, it's actually an app that should already be part of your Google suite. Up here is where you see how I'm logged in. You can just simply touch on that and you can log in either as your work email, your private email, personal email. That makes sure that you don't ever accidentally blend the two, If I make a note to get my wife something nice, I really don't want that showing up on my Google Keep at work. So it's important to keep those two things separate. And also you can see I got several lists here. Should do for me. I've got material lists. I've got tool lists. You'll see that on this list, I'm the only person on it. So if it's a really important list and I don't need to collaborate with anybody about it, it's just my list. And because I don't want to risk the chance somebody might delete something, and probably nobody else needs to see that anyways. If it's a list that we really need to have collaborators on, like a material list or a tool list, I'm going to have some people. You can see them kind of down here. And the reason this one is a different color is because somebody has updated this, and it's telling you that's been updated, and you need to notice that on your list. So the way we use this at work, our material ordering is done through this app. And everybody that is on that kind of leadership clued in team has access to this. My foremen do, my lead JWs, sometimes my power user apprentices that are really bought into the job, they get to use this. And if they need couplings, rather than calling me and saying, hey, I need some couplings, they just put it on the list. They put the quantity, they put the size, they put the type, and it's on the list. And I get that little variation in color that tells me it's been updated. That's the way it works across the board. And the same way I use it at home. On my personal account, I use it for our shopping list. One of my kids comes to me and says, hey, we're out of milk. I'm like, did you put it on the list? You put it on the list, we'll buy it. But that's your job, And it's a great way of that personal responsibility, putting it on you guys, say you need to be responsible when you use the last coupling, the last connector, the last et cetera. Okay? So the way that works when you get into the app, this is kind of a zoom in. It's got a little checkbox right there next to each item. You see in the heading, I put my job name and my job number. That way, whoever's getting it knows where I'm at. They've learned, where to charge it to, all that. They understand. So there's actually a send feature right there in the app on your mobile device. It brings up email, pop in the tool room because this one is a tool list. And that's what it looks like in the email. The subject line is auto-populated with my heading. The first line of my email is auto-populated, so they know exactly who it's from and where to send it. Our procedure on my project is then that I copy any of my contributors. So anybody who's on that form, who's inputting information, in other words, trying to order something, they get copied so they can say, oh, there it is. Ken ordered my ladders. Ken ordered my material. And if 3:30 goes by and they don't see that, they'll be like, hey, Ken, did you plan on ordering that material? Like, oh, yeah, I did. Thank you. And then I go back in there and I send that order. So it becomes, again, a team effort, a group effort. If they don't see it, they know something's gone wrong. So just a quick little tool. Once it gets ordered, we touch on that checkbox. Each item gets checked and moves from the upper part down to the lower part, and it gets a line through it. So then I know, and my team knows, that material has been ordered, and we're just waiting on it to be delivered. When it gets delivered, we just go down there and we touch on a little X that's next to each one. We delete it line by line when that material shows up on site. So you have tracking from start to finish. This is going to be ordered. This has been ordered. This has arrived. Pretty cool. GroupMe, that's the group messaging that we talked about earlier. Everybody on my job site is part of this. I know some it may bring up concerns about how does that work with the specific CBA in your area. I have not had anybody so far that's complained about using their phone. If you had somebody that didn't want to use their phone to call in and tell you they were late to work, they probably would not want to use this, but I haven't run across that yet. So just be sensitive to what's allowed and what's not allowed in your area where you work. It may be different. But if somebody says, I'm just not using it, hey, that's fine. You're going to miss out on a whole lot. But we use this for probably 95% of our communication on the job site.
So is this just for Google Drive only?
No, that's a great question. That's one of the benefits of GroupMe is that nobody's locked out. Anybody, doesn't matter what email or if you even have email, can create a GroupMe account. It's free. You have to use either a phone number or an email address. And they don't care whose email address it is. It doesn't have to be Google's or Yahoo's or anybody else. It'll work across platforms. It's one of the really great things about it. Some of us have probably found we're limited with what we can share from the Google platform based on the sharing permissions that IT has put on us. Google does not apply here. Question?
Do you prefer that over chat?
We'll talk about chat next, and I'll try to give you some benefits of each. So the first benefit is GroupMe doesn't tell me who I can't share it with. I can literally and when I say everybody on my job, everybody from the lowest end to the highest end on my project is on this group. Okay, one of my requirements is that when folks are going to be late to work, or if they're not coming in today, they have to post on GroupMe, running late. I'm not going to be in today.
Does that send it to everybody, Ken, or just
Yep, everybody. And so they don't, I'm very specific about, I don't want your details. Don't tell me you backed over your dog when you were leaving this morning or that your kid was projectile vomiting,
That was my next question. Have you had anybody put anything on there that was inappropriate or worried about? I was a little worried about that.
I manage it on the front side, usually, and make sure that they know that this is a professional environment. I do an orientation with my people and say, look, it's professional. You either act professional here or you're not going to be here. And I think that begins to spill over into it. But we've had, honestly, I use this on multiple groups. I've had more trouble on my soccer teams than I've had at work, man. But, every once in a while somebody will get near a topic a little bit and you're like, this ain't, and I'll just post it. This ain't what this group's for, and it goes away. And they leave it alone. But, just like any other conversation, sometimes you have to say, I don't think this is the right time and place for this conversation. That's a good question, though. But it's a piece you have to manage, but the time you put into managing it is far smaller than the benefit you get from it. We'll look at some of the little details here. So here you see my foreman Lonnie saying, does anyone need materials? I'm fixing to place an order. So what he's saying is if you don't have your keep updated, it's fixing to go, and then you may not get on today's cycle. You might get ordered, tomorrow or something like that. And then here's a fake message I was, ready to send. There's been a disaster on the site. Everyone drop what you're doing and gather at the emergency muster point. So you can kind of see the two far ends of the spectrum. There's real benefit in being able to communicate in real time to everybody without picking up a phone and saying, hey, there's an active shooter on our site. Everybody needs to take cover. Or the lift is down, don't use the lift. You know what I mean? So from the mundane, everyday stuff to the rare emergency, it's a great way to just send out that message and hit everybody at once. In the past, it would look like making a phone call and saying, hey, we got something crazy going on. Are you anywhere near the rest of the crew? Tell them to find shelter. Well, I'm not. I heard it, and I'm already hiding over here. And then you got to figure out how do you get that message out there to people. So it's one of the benefits is right there in just getting that message out.
Do you set up different groups like, well, if you have more than one foreman, just you and your foreman?
Yep. I've got one that's my whole crew, and then I've got one that's just my leadership. And it's exactly right, because sometimes you want to say something to a specific audience. Sometimes it needs to be everybody. Sometimes it just needs to be a tighter group. Absolutely. That's a great question, great application for how it works. So you see this one's the 13 members. Down there on the gallery, what that is when the thread gets long, it can be hard to find an attachment. I don't think I said it yet, but you can send stuff in text or an attachment. You can't send massive files, but you can send 10-page PDFs without any problem. But right there, if you lose something in the thread, you can go back to gallery and you can see everything, every picture, every file that's ever been attached or posted to that group. So I post my emergency action plan there. I post my energized work flow charts there. I want everybody in my job to understand those things. I want everybody in my job to understand what energized work we should be doing, what energized work we shouldn't be coming near. Whether you're an apprentice or a JW, I want you to know that information. And the cool thing about it is he may not ever take the time to read it on the wall at a Connex, but more than likely he or she's going to look at it on her phone at some point and at least glance at it. Maybe the first time they've ever seen it, just because I got it in front of them. And then in the settings, some people are often worried about group messaging and how irritating it gets when you're in a meeting. Your phone's bing, 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 bing. There's a mute function right there. You touch that mute button, and it gives you like 6 options: mute for 1 hour, mute for 8 hours, 24 hours, forever. And so if you're in a meeting and that thing won't quit, you just go mute, and it mute for 1 hour. And it's just really, really cool feature. Lets you step out of that excitement of that group and that aggravation for that whatever time period you tell it. So more communication, less time. Material arrives. Instead of calling the 3 people that needed to know about it, you say, "Hey, Gray Bar's here with the material you ordered," and talk and text that to your phone and send it out on GroupMe. Bridges the gaps across different platforms. Connects your team. Just that connection is so important, especially when you look at the next point there about establishing, maintaining the culture on your job. I really think messaging is an integral part of maintaining culture on your job. We heard some discussion earlier about pushing the Miller culture out into the field. This app will help you, and it has helped me to keep that culture moving forward. Like for instance, when I see something that's quality, a beautiful pipe run, I may take a picture of it and just post it and say, "Great work, guys." And I send it, and just with a small touch, I've reinforced that behavior. I've made everybody think, "Hey, I want to be part of that. I want to be on the quality side of things. I want to get the attaboy." And if I walk by the tri-stand and there's 3 pieces of cut pipe on, roller skates on the ground that somebody's going to fall down on, I'll take a picture and then send out a message and say, "Hey, this just got cleaned up by me. We don't, this isn't who we are. We don't need to let this happen again." Just simple stuff like that. And without doing a full stand down, where I stop everybody what they're doing and bring them over to the office and talk about them about housekeeping. Just with a quick message, I've established and reinforced our culture of quality, of safety, etc. So you can imagine the applications for that. Just those little touches throughout the day. You can't get to see everybody on every project every day. Sometimes you can. And this is not intended to replace those face-to-face conversations that need to happen, those harder conversations, those more interpersonal things that need to happen. But when something's small and it just requires a little touch, a little reminder, GroupMe's great for it. It's perfect for it. And one of the limitations is, like I said, file size. You can't attach gigantic things. It's good for like 10-second or less videos. We use it in lockout, tagout scenarios where we've got 50 people involved in an outage, and maybe only a handful of people are going to be at the breaker in the lockout scenario. We lock it out, we'll take pictures or maybe video of it getting locked out and the key going in the lockbox. And then they can watch that video and know that the key that's on that breaker is in the box that just got delivered to them. And they can see that on GroupMe. No. GroupMe is zero cost. It'll accept up to like 999 users on a single group. So I've never got anywhere near that. But it's one of the great things about it. It's free. It's unrestricted. I think if you say ugly things on there that break general standards of decorum, they'll probably freeze you up. But haven't run into that problem yet. And then here we get to Google Spaces. Now I haven't known about Google Spaces for very long. I just actually learned about it this week. I've known about Google Chat, had no idea that Spaces was there. And I just want to say, if you go looking for an app called Google Spaces, you're not going to find it. Because Google Spaces is actually a subcategory under Google Chat. Google Chat's already on your email, home screen on your computer, but it is also an app that you can download onto your phone. And when you get into chat, you'll see there's a little icon down there. You touch on it. It's called Spaces. And it's more like a more powerful tool when you want to attach bigger files or you want to assign things to specific people. Like if I go on GroupMe and say, "Somebody clean this up," Well, there ain't nobody on the job named somebody, so it ain't getting cleaned up. You know, but if I go on here, and this is maybe I'm just going to have a more specific group of like my leadership team, my foreman, my lead JWs, I can say, you know, hey Fred, you need to go to this area and clean it up, and I'll make it a task. This is, you know, Mike Walker introduced me to this, and he assigned me, you know, the task of buying him an otter, and I assigned him the task of learning Latin. And one of the cool things about this is when you have a task sitting in your box that you haven't taken care of, it shows up in your calendar every day. Every morning, boom, you got a task, buy him an otter. And I still hadn't done it. So the point is, that's what I'm about to get to. The point is you can assign ownership and then you can track, did it happen? So when you're doing your QC thing, when you go to walk around, hey, I told him to clean this area up. I told a specific person to take care of this. And they checked it off and said it was done. Then when I go by there and it's not done, I can go right back into the app and take that little check mark they put on there off and reassign it to them. So pretty cool in that regard. Granted, probably should have a follow-up conversation and say, hey, I noticed you checked that and I just unchecked it because it ain't done. You did 30% of what I asked, but I need you to do 100%. Yeah, he hasn't unchecked me yet, but he better because he ain't getting an order from me. So it's a powerful tool in that regard. You can. I love that it ties in with your calendar. This one is limited to Google, to Miko Google users, from what I understand. Like if you don't have the permissions to share outside of Miller, you won't be able to share this with anybody who doesn't have a Miko email address. So that's one of the limitations here. But again, mostly I would see this used towards your leadership team, who you need to get that hardware and that setup in their hands anyway. So it's a great tool for that. And I attached like a 10-minute video to it, and it didn't even hiccup. So it'll handle much bigger files than GroupMe. All right, Bluebeam. Eddie O'Halloran told me Bluebeam is Adobe on steroids. This was years ago when I first heard about it, and I had to go to him to get permission to get access. And he's right. If you like what you can do with PDFs in Adobe, Bluebeam is just so much better. It's so much more powerful. If you're not using it, there's just some really great benefits. You've probably heard about tracking your progress and that it is a standard across Miller to color code your prints. Yeah, you could do that on paper still, and yes, it's still acceptable, but you're going to be much more efficient if you do it in Bluebeam. For one, you don't have to be the only person doing it. Two, every update shows up on every user's end all at the same time. So I can have multiple people taking care of my completion logs, taking care of my red lines, and also when my boss calls me and says, hey, how are y'all looking? How much should we have complete for this month before I bill? You can say, well, you're already on the Bluebeam job with us. Why don't you just check it out? And I'm not saying we don't want to talk to our bosses, but again, limited resource, limited time. I need to be doing expensive things, not giving somebody a dashboard update that they could get from their computer by just looking at this resource that's there. So if you do this in Bluebeam, it can be visible to anybody you want it to be visible to. So great time saver in that regard. When you get a revision, it's really easy to just stamp superseded on that one and insert the next revision into your file. I already touched on as-builts, red lines. Keeping your red lines going in real time is so important. I know historically red lines have often been something that people would say, well, the job's over, let's go do the red lines. And, or they got lost and that information was gone with the wind. If you keep it here in the cloud, it can't get lost. It's going to be there when you need it and when it's time to turn it over to the engineer. One of the cool things about it, because we have a spectrum of people on the job site. Some are power users. They want to use technology. Some are still pen and paper guys. They don't want tech. They're going to be needing the pen and paper. I can, inside of Bluebeam, under the print settings, I can get a zoom in on a current view on a specific, high detail area of a drawing, and I can print that. I can also get get window here, use that function, and I can draw a box around a specific detail. Hey, this wall has to be built this way. This transformer pad in this case has to look a certain way. I can print it on whatever size printer I've got available, and I can hand that to my guy and say, here, this is how it's got to be built. And sometimes that's very useful. Some people, if they don't want to use their tech or they don't have it, hand them a drawing. Sometimes I'll even laminate a drawing. Somebody's working outside, say, here, get it wet, get it dirty. It's still going to say the same thing. And it's just a really cool thing you can do with Bluebeam that you can't do with Adobe. You try to take pictures in Adobe and print it, and it jacks up everything. This will let you drill down from even a big drawing down to just a little tiny piece and print it. So really cool. And again, we didn't say a lot about printers. Make sure you got a printer on your job site that can print in the appropriate sizes. All right, purchasing apps. Anybody had trouble with supply chain lately? You know, that's kind of the running joke, isn't it? You know, maybe we used to buy all our stuff from 1 or 2 suppliers, but now we got to have options. And just one of the things that I use these purchasing apps for is having those backup options. I've bought, you know, grounding, bushing. Jeremiah knows about that. Sometimes you got to go outside the box to find something that's required for your job. Nobody else in town has it. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, having these apps ready on your phone, ready to go. Cool quick thing here about Amazon versus Amazon Business. If you don't know about Amazon Business, it'll let you keep your personal Amazon and your work Amazon 100% separate. Again, the last thing in the world you want to do is forget to log out of one account and log into the other, you know, and go buy some underwear on Miller's credit card on Amazon, and then you're explaining to the embarrassed girl there, you know, at payroll, or excuse me, at accounting, I need to get this fixed. You know, I did that wrong. So it just keeps them totally separate. It's 2 different buttons on your phone. Great way to do it. And I also use these somewhat like a notepad at times. You know, if I know something just needs to be bought and I don't need to put it on my to-do list or on a material list, and I know I'm going to handle it, you know, if we got a slick spot that keeps showing up on the concrete, and I'll just go right to Amazon and, you know, put 4 rubber anti-slip mats in my cart. And then when I get back, you know, later to my desk, I'll go ahead and put other things in there that I need to buy for the day and order it. So it can be a great reminder too, because sometimes you put it in there and you know, then you go sit on a desk, you're like, oh dang, I got stuff in my cart, I needed to buy that. Those guys asked me about it. Worst feeling in the world for me is when I let my guys down. When they say, did you get that thing ordered? Did you get that piece of equipment coming? You're like, I was supposed to, but I didn't. You know, you just don't want to be in that situation, right? So this is just another set of tools for your toolbox to help get you there. It's not up here because I just found out about it today, but Graybar has an app. Somebody in my last class said they're using it and enjoying it. If you go to download the Graybar app from the App Store, when you get it, it looks kind of weird. It almost looks like it's incomplete, but what's going on there is you have to reach out to your salesman, get login credentials, and actually get, you know, some specific input information so they can verify you're from Miller, because they don't want to share their inventory and their pricing with just anybody. They want to make sure it's going to the right people. Once you have that app set up, you can see real-time inventory and pricing in your zone or any of the zones across the country from their app. So I haven't used it yet, but that's what it's supposed to do. Might be something you want to look into. And these other apps, everything that's up there I've found useful. And I bought stuff from every one of those apps there that have helped me get my job done. So when other suppliers are failing, make sure you think outside the box. MyMiller, if you haven't heard about it, it's a great place that hosts just a lot of information that we might need. Employee directory is not maintained there anymore. It's actually moved to Pingboard, but there is a link to Pingboard at MyMiller. There's also, I think, a link to Pingboard on your email screen. But so warning and termination slips, those should be done virtual now. You basically go on there, pull the thing off, and fill it out, scan it, send it off. You know, if you're doing it on paper exclusively, you're not doing it the right way anymore. So we need to be doing that virtually. This next item is something it's one of those things that there's just plenty of ways to get yourself in trouble when it comes to new hires, HR, and safety. And one of the cool things about MyMiller is there is information about every one of those topics there. So you have something come up, you got to hire somebody quick. You go to the HR site and you're going to find out if you're doing it right, and you can get ahead of making the right decision rather than getting slapped on the wrist because you did it wrong. Sometimes you have an event on your job site that kind of is an HR event. Somebody says something, somebody writes something, somebody engages in an action that you have to address. Plenty of guidance there. You know, most of us don't just know what we should do right out of, you know, off the top of our head. There's a lot of guidance there that will help you to know what to do. And of course, safety is just so much of what we do just orbits around safety. And if you're on a job that's small enough to where it doesn't have a safety coordinator, whether you know this or not, you are the safety coordinator. That is your job as the field leader. That's right there in Miller's handbook. It explains what your responsibilities are and explains how you need to do it. So maybe that's new information to you, but you can fill in the blanks of what I just told you by looking at the safety information on MyMiller. You are the safety coordinator. Fleet resources, I won't say much about that because I think we've read all the emails lately. If you ever forget what's been emailed out, it'll be right there on MyMiller too. So timekeeping, safety inspections, daily report, checklist, loads of forms, box ordering diagram. I'll show you that real quick. If you've ever had to order a specialty box, you know that there's a lot of room for confusion, and when it shows up wrong and you're on a deadline, it can be just a deal breaker for getting your job done. So this is just and this was drawn in Bluebeam too, something else you can do in Bluebeam, isometric drawings. Just simple X, Y, Z dimensions. You fill in the blank, whether it's a 6-sided box or 8-sided box. You send it off. And if the person that receives that can't understand what that diagram means, then they probably shouldn't be in the box building business. It is just cut and dried. It prevents those extra emails about, did you mean this when you said that? And it prevents them from sending the wrong stuff out. Just a quick time saver. It's on MyMiller under the Foreman tools all the way at the bottom. LMS, Learning Management Site. It sounds self-explanatory, but the purpose of the LMS is to be one-stop shopping for all of our training transcripts. Eventually, perhaps it will be all of our training needs. It's not right now. We still have to go to safety for some stuff, for really anything safety related. But the goal of the LMS is to allow us to go look at our employees' transcripts and see what training they have, what they don't have. Whether you know it or not, anybody who's using a specialty tool on your job, performing a specialty task, working at heights, working on a lift, excavation, confined space, NFPA 70, you have to have documentation that says they have been trained by Miller to do that task. And if you don't have that documentation available to you, you're putting yourself at risk, you're putting that employee at risk, and you're putting Miller at risk. Because we are on the hook if that person isn't trained and we're using them outside of their frame of reference, their training. So the cool thing about the LMS, it's not incredibly user-friendly, but we're working to get it that direction. It takes a little bit of figuring out to know how to use it. But you can build your own team. So everybody that's on your job can get in your team. That lets you search your team for specific skill sets to see if they're trained. So that's really handy when the GC says, hey, you can't put that person to work until I see their paperwork that says they're trained on that machine, on that lift. So that's the world we live in. You've got to have documentation or it doesn't exist. So it can help you there. If you need a specific training discipline that maybe you're not familiar with and you don't know if anybody has it, like I need a crane operator, I can go up to the search tab there and I can search all of Miller's employees and just search crane operator. And anybody who's got crane operator in their transcript will come up, and then at least you know who to call, say, man, I need some advice about this. Can you give us some expertise on this, or are you available? Any of those questions you might need to answer when you're just trying to locate that skill set. That's the goal with the LMS. It's got a long ways to go, but it's getting better day by day as they make improvements on it.